Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 91 of The Best Games, period. I'm your host, Jack Gardner, and with me this week is Naomi Lugo.
Hello.
And also with me this week is Marcus Stewart, returning guest.
It's the hat trick. Number 3.
Heck yeah.
The trifecta.
And on The Best Games, period, every week we try and get together and talk about a game we think deserves to be nominated as one of the best games of all time. Something that belongs in video game canon, if you want to be snooty and pretentious about it. And this week we've nominated, or maybe I've nominated, I'm not really sure. I was really pushing hard for this game. I'll probably just say I nominated it.
Yeah, that's fair.
Frog Fractions.
Frog Fractions.
Which is a game, technically.
I mean, it's a game. It's in a sense, it's several games in one.
Spoiler alert.
That's true.
It's like,
that's true.
It's the poo-poo platter of games.
On that note, spoilers are in store, and this is, much like the Stanley Parable, a game that you really, really should play before you listen to this podcast. And it's not going to take you a long time. It only takes you about an hour to get all the way through it, depending on how you play.
And the game is free, so get to it.
Right.
And it's browser-based. So you have
Yep.
you have a computer, you've got this. There's no excuse. We're eliminating all your
Zero
excuses.
If you can watch YouTube on your laptop, you can play Frog Fractions.
So what's your opening gambit, I guess, for this game? Because this was an interesting choice. When you pitched this, when you invited me on the show, I was like, huh, really? So I would...
Well...
Yeah, what's your thesis here?
My main thesis is that it completely deconstructs what you expect from a game in a way that I think is very approachable and fun and also just unflinchingly bizarre and itself, and I love pretty much every second of this game. Especially in the context of, if you are just playing it for the first time, it is truly one of the best experiences to go into blind. So again, spoiler alert, go play the game before you listen to the podcast. That being said, I think it's one of the funniest games I've ever played and weirdest games I've ever played, and I love it. It's my son.
Oh, wow. Did you?
It's a pretty powerful pitch right there.
Have you confirmed
Yep.
this? Like, have you been on Mari? Because that's how you get that stuff confirmed.
I had a game code test done, and it is at least 50% of my code. So,
Oh, wow. Congratulations,
Yeah.
I guess.
I didn't want to tell the world, but Jim Crawford and I, some things happened.
That extra beard.
Is it Facebook official?
It's not.
Oh.
But no. So for a little bit of background, Frog Fractions is a game that came out in 2012, I believe, maybe 2013.
12.
As far as I can tell, it was accidentally released, as told by the developer in an interview. Essentially what he wanted to do, Jim Crawford, was he wanted to pitch this game to the Independent Games Festival, and they told him, sorry, not enough people are talking about it. And so he went to this video game journalist, I believe, named Brennan Sheffield, and he played it and loved it and then shared it on Twitter, and that overnight there were tens of thousands of people playing Frog Fractions, and it became kind of a minor viral sensation, which got the game into the festival, and it became an award-winning game. Rock Paper Shotgun says that it might just be one of the best games of all time. So I feel like my case isn't as weak as it initially appears, because there are some people out there at reputable outlets who do say that it very well might be one of the most brilliant games ever made.
Okay.
Yeah.
See,
First of all, it's weird that he was denied from the that festival for that reason. Like, it struck me as like, isn't the whole point of such an event to spotlight lesser known games? Like, why would you bring it if it was already this well known product? I mean,
Exactly.
yeah, that seems like when you said that, I was like, really? Okay. But I'm sorry, Naomi. Didn't interrupt you.
Oh, no worries. I was just going to say that before he was even trying to get into the festival, he was initially trying to make a game that would make his friends laugh. That was like the whole spawn of it. And then it kind of blossomed into this bigger project that he tried to pitch. And then it went, as Jack said, from there. Which I think is a big part of why this game resonates with so many people, is because it kind of has that, I don't want to sound cheesy here, but kind of pure trolling essence to it. It wasn't trying to be a gimmick. It was just trying to amuse Sam Crawford's friends.
Right. It's very sincere in how weird it is. It's not. I think part of it is it's not a thing that was made to make money. Like, it's never been monetized. Like, you can still go out and play it for free. As far as I know, you'll always be able to play Frog Fractions for free.
Yeah, the developer, he felt like it would be fraud to charge for this game, and I can kind of see his debate there. Like, if someone wants to go in there genuinely wanting to learn about fractions through little frogs, they are not going to get that experience. So I can see his legal defense there, I guess.
We should probably have led off with the fact that this game does not teach you fractions.
At all.
And also is not really much about frogs.
I mean, you play as a frog. You are a frog.
It's mostly about bugs, though.
There are a lot of bugs.
But you, as the frog enemy, destroying these bugs, you're an anti-bug protagonist, I guess.
Oh, I mean, by the end of the game, you are the leader of the bugs, though.
Yeah, it's true.
Their entire planet.
You do gain citizenship.
And creating bug porn, that's for the greater good of all bugs, right?
That's
the main job of Bug President.
So, like, if you haven't played this game, you're probably just like, what? And that's kind of, it's like, how do you even talk about this game? Like, even if you go, like, in the order of which the events play out, it sounds on paper just absolutely insane. I like, let alone, it's like, wait, bug porn? And then going to Mars, and you're, like, at a spaceship, there's a crazy dream sequence.
And the dragon. Right, there's a dragon as your best friend.
His name's Draggy the Dragon.
Marcus, it might make more sense if we walk through it in a chronological order, so why don't you take us away?
Okay, so the game starts off pretty simple. You're a little frog on a lily pad, and there's bugs flying around, and you're just clicking to, extend your tongue and just eat bugs. And every time you eat a bug, fractions kind of float around, and you're kind of doing that for a little bit. And every now and there's also apples floating, and then they'll fall.
Oh yeah, gotta get those apples.
Yeah, you gotta get the apples.
Like a billion of them.
Yeah, or at least not initially, but yeah, like, and what you use the apples for is that occasionally you'll be asked to purchase upgrades by spending your apples. So you can get like a homing tongue, you can get like static electricity that bundles the bugs together, you can get a turtle, you can replace the lily pad with a turtle that you can use to move from side to side, because initially you're just stationary in the middle of the lake. And at first it seems pretty straight-faced, like it seems there's something a little off about it, but nothing that would make you think that it was any more than what it is or what it tries to be. And then pretty soon you kind of start, it's not really until you start reading kind of the descriptions for the upgrades that you kind of like, there's some like tongue-in-cheek humor here, like this doesn't seem like something that would be written for like an educational game in terms of like, and like I think like
wait. The descriptions are what tipped you off. It wasn't the fact that you could buy like a working visa for the frog.
Well, you can at first. Like the first few upgrades are pretty like like the tongue, the turtle. I'm trying to think of what the weirdest one. Like the only weird one
it was the space
attainable.
One that kind of
like the warp space thing.
Yeah,
and that's the one you're just like but like you're like okay. And it's not until like you get the dragon, because you have to get the turtle first, and then you get the option to upgrade the turtle to a dragon, and it's literally like a Chinese dragon that you can then use to fly around the screen out of the water. And one of the coolest things I've forgotten about, because I replayed it, I've only played it twice, and I played it for the first time last year, and then played it again not long before recording this to refresh my memory. And you can keep doing that initial part for a good while until you realize that you can dive under the water, and you'll see all of the apples that have fallen that you've missed. And if you kind of dive into those, you'll just immediately get like a zillion, or I think it just straight up says like a billion. Like, the counter yeah, like the counter just goes from like numbers to just like a billion. Because you look at some of the upgrades and you see how like absurd some of the prices are. Like, how am I supposed to get that many apples? And then you just dive down below. So it's kind of a cool little secret. And I wonder how many people just kept doing that, just the eating bugs part until you just think
until you get 3 million for one of the upgrades.
Yeah,
oh boy, there's at least one person that happened to.
Exactly, or they just quit because they're like, oh, I guess this is it, and then you're like, oh, if I hit down, you're like, wait, oh, I can go down here. So I've always thought that was cool. Yeah. And then at that point you can unlock the like space hyperdrive, whatever it is, and then your dragon shoots into the sky, and all of a sudden a little chat window opens up, and there's like weird little characters like a snowman and just random people talking to you, and they're referring to you as...
It becomes Star Fox.
It pretty much becomes Star Fox. Like they're calling you Lieutenant Hop, and you're dodging asteroids, and you're still eating bugs, but now you're flying through space. Also at this point, the bugs have started like firing like bullet hell style projectiles at you.
But they don't really affect you like they should. So
no, they're pretty crappy, and they move really slow. So it's like this weird. It's like a weak like Ikaruga or something.
Yeah.
And so you're doing that. And then eventually it very abruptly like cuts to like you and Mars. You get in a little boss fight where you're just like this robot like crab spider thing. You beat that thing. Then it cuts to like you in a courtroom, and you're on trial because you're on. And the thing that I forgot about this, but what cracks me up about this scene is that you're on Mars, but they just call it Bug Mars. And I don't know, I don't know why, but that just makes me laugh. Like it's like, oh, it's Bug Mars. Like that's the distinction. We're not even gonna come up with a different name for it. Like no, it's and like everything there is just a normal thing, but with bug in front of it.
Yeah.
So it's
like bug Jersey Shore, bug Snooki.
And you start getting options to like reply and respond in conversations.
Yeah.
And so you have one of my favorite little touches to this game is, in every conversation, you have the option to freak out about how there are bugs everywhere.
Yeah, it's like the last one, and it's just him going like bugs. Like I think the
I
chair
feel them
is made
under
out of
my
bugs.
skin.
And it doesn't matter. At least as far as I can tell, after playing it twice, it doesn't seem to matter what you pick. Like you will always pass the trial because it starts as a trial, and then the judge is like a moth, like a giant moth, and then they present the option of like, well, you can gain citizenship here if you want to take our citizenship test, and that'll kind of like absolve you of your crimes. So, he starts asking you questions about like the history of Bug Mars and like the Bug Declaration of Independence and Bug Jersey Shore. Like, what is Bug Snooki's favorite snack or whatever?
Favorite ice cream flavor. Thank you.
Oh, see, Naomi knows. And yeah, like I think you can just kind of hit whatever you want, and you will always pass this test. It's probably my favorite part of the whole game. Actually, is this courtroom scene.
Yeah.
Like I just
same here.
I think so, yeah.
That was
like,
the moment where I was like, oh, okay, this game is yeah.
Yeah, like playing it the second time, I was like, yeah, this is solidified itself. It's my favorite part. Like it's still extremely funny. And then after that, let's see, you get your badge, you get your license, and you can make your own like digital signature. I drew a penis as my signature, of course.
You have to. I drew a smiley face and a unicorn. I mean, you just have to.
Yeah, I think the first time I drew a smiley face, and then this time I just drew a dick. And I was literally half expecting the game to acknowledge it in some way. I was like, what if they like expect people to do this? But it doesn't. So it's still cool either way. And then at that point, oh god, I'm getting a little hazy now. You go
through the underwater tunnels,
yeah, right,
and learn about boxing.
Yeah, like so you get your dragon buddy, Draggy the dragon. You fly, like you're flying through like a little mini labyrinth underwater. It's kind of got like a Donkey Kong Country Return style like silhouette thing going on.
Yeah.
And as you're doing this narrator kicks in out of nowhere and just starts randomly narrating about the history of boxing. And I'm not entirely sure if it's true or not. Like both times I played
accurate.
this, I assume it is because that would make it funnier. Just like that's the only reason why I would assume. But like both times I meant to Google like the history of boxing just to verify, and I forgot to do it. So I was like, is this true? Because someone, I don't know. It's a really ridiculous history.
I have to feel that that's intentional. They want it to be, or they wanted it to be something that people wouldn't really care enough about.
Yeah, I can see that. Like it's funny and how just it's sheer randomness.
Yes.
Which I've been curious about, like how big that map is underwater. Because I remember the first time I got a little lost, and I assume that every time the narrator kind of pipes in again, it's a sign that you're going in the right direction. I'm assuming that's because he's silent for a while, and then I would take a new path, and then he would chime in again. And the first time I played, I was like, okay, that must be like. And maybe that's my kind of like preconditioning to like video games. Like that's a very standard video game thing to do when you're being led by a narrator.
Yeah.
So like, and the second time I don't remember the way. So like the first time I just wandered around, and the second time I basically did. I think I got there quicker the second time around. But it made me wonder if like, would this have spat me out somewhere else eventually, like at the spot eventually, or is there like a maybe not one path, but maybe a few right paths that you can take, but you can get lost.
I think there is one, but there's like a couple hidden little caverns that you can go into. Like there was one cavern where you can go and say hi to like a merman who's watching TV underwater. And then there's a couple dead end ones. So I think there is a set path, but there's a couple different like forks, but they'll all lead you eventually to the same spot.
Yeah, I think it's just disorienting because of how the pathways are set up and how like the different screens are, because like sometimes you go into a new screen and it's just like a part of a tunnel that comes into it and then shifts out of it, and so you're like, and then sometimes it narrows really far, and so it's just the geometry of it is more disorienting than actually like the pathways that you can go down, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can see that. And actually, I bumped into that mermaid the first time I played. I'd forgotten about him. I didn't, excuse me, I didn't run into him the second time. But I'm glad you brought him up, Naomi. And then eventually, of course. And of course, once you get to the end of it, you find a spaceship, like a downed ship, and you get inside of that. And then you get blasted off into space.
And a text adventure.
So, this is where I'm going to kind of like... there's a couple points I wanted to bring up about this game that playing it the second time I didn't have these thoughts the first time I played it. But I think that the text adventure part is kind of the hard make or break for this game in terms of like, I think this is the point where like some people are going to either stop playing and be done with this game, or they're going to go, because it's like it's a straight up old school style like Zork text adventure where you're on the ship and you have to figure out how to set the computer to guide you back to bug Mars, and then also once you do that you have to get your like your hibernation pod, because it's going to take like forever to get there. So it's like, well, you got to go to sleep so that you can you freeze yourself to sleep, and you got to figure out how to get your pod working. And it's a legit puzzle. Like it's a straight up text adventure. It's still funny, but there's not really any like, there's no really hand holding or anything like that. Like it really does like it's on you to figure out how to get all that stuff done. And
I think it's probably most disorienting if you've never played a text adventure before.
Yes, and I have never.
I have not
played
either.
Really?
Yeah, until
Really?
Frog Fractions, I'd never played like a legit true text adventure. Like no, I never have.
And I agree. I hated that part. I mean, I
got
was
super lost the first time.
Yes, that is not me at all. I do not like puzzles, especially when I can't even see what's going on.
Yeah, like
we need to get together and play Zork.
I would love to play Zork.
Sometime.
I'm always been down to play one of those old ones. I just haven't like actively sought it out. So when I first saw it in Frog, I was like, oh, this is cool. Like I can kind of like, I guess kind of like sample these kind of games. But yeah, kind of like Naomi's point. Like I do enjoy puzzle games. Like I love puzzle games a lot actually. But I got so lost the first time. Like, I spent way more time on that part than I probably should have the very first time. And even the second time, like, the second time I had the advantage of, like, remembering certain things so I could skip ahead. But even towards the end, I got kind of stuck for a bit of, like, okay, what was the last thing I got to do to finish this? Because it's a, like, you know, like most text adventure, it's a lot of visualization, which is cool. But, I guess like you said, Jack, if you've never really been exposed to it or played those games, I think that's going to be the point where you can start to question if you want to keep going, because it can hold you there for a while.
I think it's the kind of thing that falls into that old school adventure game mindset. Like, if you didn't play the old King's Quest games, you're going to have a real hard time getting into those, just because some of the puzzles don't make any sense at all. There isn't a logical progression of, like, oh, I need this to do this. It's like, I need to try everything on this one puzzle and see what works.
Yeah.
And if I don't have anything, I might have missed it 2 chapters back, and I'm just doomed to fail, or I still need to explore some more. And this puzzle isn't nearly that bad, but the people who have, like, the time and patience to do a puzzle like that, or, you know, grew up with puzzles like that were really kind of obtuse.
Mm-hmm.
I think people who have more patience for that will kind of be down with this puzzle sequence. Otherwise, it's like the one part of the game where I'd be like, just look up a guide.
Yeah, I think my problem with it, because again, I love puzzle games and I have a lot of patience for puzzles, but I think because this game is it's like a comedy game, basically. Like, it's a comedic game. So, like, you know, comedy is about timing, and this kind of brings the game to an abrupt halt. And it was the only time that it felt frustrating, because up to that point, the game is pretty easy, and a lot of it is pretty on rails. Like I said, like, you can't really fail or anything at that point. It just kind of chugs you along. So it's a pretty steady stream of, like, oh, this is really ridiculous and this is hilarious. And then you get to this one, like, legit game part of, like,
Yeah.
you actually have to think. And it's just, like, the second time doing it, I was like, okay, this is a really jarring kind of change of pace. And I don't know if I like it, because then, like, some of the writing in it is still funny, like some of the responses of, like, when you're denied something. And I actually think that the sequence of putting things together makes sense in terms of, like, okay, I need the tape to put the wire. Like, some of it's pretty ingenious. Like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But I think I had less patience, because especially the first time of, like, with Frog Fraction's reputation of, like, this is supposed to be hilarious, and then getting stuck in that part just drove me nuts. Like, I just want to see the rest of this game. I don't even want to do this anymore. Like,
Yeah, same here. That's how
Yeah,
I
like-
felt. I was like, I know I need to play this game and get through it to see all of its hilarity, but that was just painful for me. I did not like that part at all.
Yeah, it's rough. And the jokes, and then because you're seeing the same responses over and over, the jokes in that scene wear thin pretty quick of, like, okay.
Yeah. And I 100% get where you guys are coming from. However, I think it's part of, for me, it's also part of what gives Frog Fraction some of its charm, because it is such a grab bag of video game ideas and tropes and all of this weird stuff shoved together with so much like weirdly misplaced sincerity, or not even misplaced, it's just sincere. But it's sincere about such an odd array of subject matter that it's almost like you know how people, like, will talk about in movies and, like, books how, oh, that had kind of, like, some sharp edges to it,
Mm-hmm.
because, like, it was weird or uncomfortable, or, like, you could see the shadow of the camera or something, but somehow that kind of made it more real, even though it was part of what, like, made it objectively, it's something that makes it not as good, but you appreciate it more for having that flaw.
Yeah. It's a callback
That's-
game without just being dripping in nostalgia, like just standard platformers with pixels. And we can talk more about the kind of education game genre where this spawned from and why it was such a genius thing to tap into. So, I mean, some of my first gaming memories, like preschool, kindergarten, were playing these horrible 90s education games like Reader Rabbit, Freddy Fish, like Dr. Seuss adaptations into these just really cheesy point click, I guess, adventure game, I guess you could call it. Some of them were. And
which one was your favorite?
I think I really liked the Dr. Seuss one because it was so wacky back in the day. But there was also like an Arthur one I remember really I mean, I remember it, so I'm assuming I liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or it traumatized you.
Yeah, it was so
way.
awful that you're like,
I mean, that's totally possible. But I mean, these games, they were so... If you go back and preparing for this podcast, I went back on YouTube and watched some of these and I was like, oh my God. Wow. Holy crap. These are beautiful and how terrible they are. Because it is like the cheesiest voice acting, like the very like stiff and animation style. And then it was made for kids. So all the jokes are just really terrible. And I think that was it was a gold mine for that kind of snarky satirical comedy for the developer to tap into, and I think kudos to that because the game does not take itself seriously, and that's what earns it some points. No, it does not, and that's where that dissonance, the play on dissonance from all of like games cliches kind of lends it in its favor for that.
Do you think that this particular part kind of takes itself a little too seriously? Because, like, I mean, like, the writing, no, but, like, mechanically, it is a straight-up text adventure. Like, you do have to, like, play it. It's pretty straight-faced on that front.
But I see where Jack is coming from. I mean, this was this nostalgia for the developer. Like, this is what he and his friends grew up on. So he wrote it for them and not necessarily a wide consumer base. Like, he wrote it because he knew that his friends would be able to enjoy this and, you know, just see the jokes in there. So it takes itself... I don't think it takes itself seriously, even at that point. I think that was just a difficult mechanic that I'm just not used to, and so it's inaccessible for me.
That's kind of where I am on it. Like, it's not necessarily bad. It's kind of like how when someone plays a 3D game for the first time and they're like, what do I do with this camera? And they're like, you know, running around. Some people get motion sick. Like, that's we don't have that same kind of whiplash when we go back to something that's like Zork and text adventure-y, but we do, like, it's the same in the sense that we don't have the same. It's a skill, and we just don't have it to that same degree.
Well, and it's like the newer independent platformers, like our age, we are kind of used to those. It's kind of the games that we initially grew up with, right? But the next generation of gamers, maybe they're not going to understand that type of nostalgia because they're not going to understand the appeal of Metroidvania games or these super tough platformers. I think it's the same kind of thing that's happening.
Yeah. It's a very interesting kind of... I know this isn't really like 100% about Frog Fractions. I just find it interesting. But that video games have to be learned, and often we take that for granted when we know how most of the games we play are supposed to play. And so I think I don't know, I think it's interesting to imagine a future where, despite all of our experience playing video games, we are playing new games that we're just baffled by because we haven't developed the same skill that a younger generation has, you know?
Like VR, VR is jarring right now, but the next generation who grew up with it, they're going to be totally fine with it.
Yeah.
I think it's just the least satirized portion of that game because, like, everything up to that point is like a satire, and like, okay, the beginning is a satire on education games, so it's like it's easy to get through because it's like, oh, we're just kind of making fun of it. You can't really fail it. And then you've got the, like, kind of like bullet hell-ish Star Fox thing that, again, you can't really fail. It's like a breezy thing. Then you get to the courtroom thing, which is kind of like a play on, like choice-driven conversation stuff. And then the brief kind of like exploration thing that may or may not be, I mean, I guess you could say maybe like semi-Metroid-ish, but, just kind of like, like branching exploration, which again is like whatever. And then you get to this point where it's like a hard stop of like, you're kind of like, you almost think like, oh, they're probably going to like, I can type in whatever I want and it'll just go. And it's like, no, you actually
That's how I initially played it, actually. I was like, yeah, I typed in frog fractions and I typed in like bug suck and like, I was hoping for something there.
Yeah, it's harsher than you would think it would be. Like, it's very, like, even with the classic verb thing of like, you got to use the right verb. You can't just say this. And I was like, oh, wow, no, this is serious. Like, I kept waiting for it. I was waiting, like, because everything else was so jokey and how the mechanics were of like, hey, this is a classic thing, but we're going to take it easy on you because it's a joke. And then this was the only part that was like, no, we're doing this like they used to do it, like straight face, like you got to put in the right verb. And you're like, oh, okay.
Maybe that itself is part of the joke. Like all of a sudden you get to a part of the game that's actually serious about it.
Yeah,
it's that kind of works as a joke itself.
It was like was kind of like it was like if you got to school but like school started with recess and then you went back to school and had to do actual work. Like that's what it felt like. Oh no, I actually have to try.
Yeah. I think it's jarring because it's the least mainstream of the game genres that they poke fun of. Like Marcus and I have never played these text adventure games. We know of them, but we just never had to play them because there were plenty of other games to play, and I just never had that appeal to play those.
Yeah, I only got through it because I've watched enough movies of 80s kids playing them that I knew what to do.
See, it was a slow crawl for me. Oh, it was.
Yeah, I was like, okay, like it was only fun for me that novelty. Like, okay, I've watched movies. I've seen kids do this. Like, you put in the verb and do. So that was it.
See, I was immediately mad. Like I've said before, I am allergic to puzzles. But I mean, there's like the command menu that comes up, right? But then it like disappears. I'm like, wait a minute, I wanted to write that down or something. So it was like remembering all of that and trying to figure out how that even works in this mechanic. It was not fun for me.
I now know I should not underestimate your hatred of puzzles.
You shouldn't.
I don't think I think I've heard you mention that once, but I don't think that I was aware of that.
I severely dislike puzzles. Like
really?
it makes me so mad that games are a lot of the time built around that just because it's a necessary mechanic. I will get through them, but I will not like a second of it.
It sounds like me with poker. Like any kind of video game makes me play a card game that isn't like. Yeah, because I don't know how to play poker or any of those like fancy card games.
Even in like Red Dead, like those kind of
that
games?
was awful in Red Dead.
Really?
Like, there's one part in Red Dead where you have to play poker for like a mission. Like I avoided it because it was a side thing, but there's one part where I had to do it. So I had to like learn the game on the fly. I was like, I don't know how. I have no idea how poker works. Like I only know watching like Bond movies and like I know I've seen people go like royal flush and that stuff. Like, oh, I know that's good. I don't know what a royal flush actually is, but that makes you win the game or something.
I like the idea of Marcus sitting at a table and not knowing like how to play poker,
and I was waiting for him to teach me.
And then just laying down random cards and being
what
like,
about that?
royal flush. And everyone's looking. That's not a royal flush, Marcus.
And I was like, it's well, this worked in the Bond movies. I saw Casino Royale. That's what he did. So yeah, I could see it. I feel like there's a funny series waiting to happen of just putting you in front of just the biggest puzzles game ever and just watching you play them.
Then I'll just sit there and like yell at the screen the whole time. Like if you made me play The Witness.
I was just
my God.
I was like, we're just going to make you play The Witness.
It would just be sad. I would just be sitting there just getting angrier and angrier. And sometimes the puzzles aren't even hard, and that's what's my brain is just not equipped. Like in Breath of the Wild, just like looking around and finding stupid buttons would just baffle me. I don't understand.
Hated like 2/3 of those shrines.
What about Portal though?
Yeah, Portal.
I haven't played through Portal. I tried, But then I was like, oh, this is what this game is going to be. No, thank you.
I was wondering like if the writing was enough to carry you through it.
See, then I'll just like watch a stream of it. Yeah.
Okay.
It is painful for me to do puzzles. I mean, like, I love the Zelda series. I love it, love it, love it. But, oh my god, the puzzles.
That's like 80% puzzles.
I know. Okay,
yeah,
just
like the puzzles are a big part of that series.
Little Naomi playing through Ocarina of Time for the first time. Like, this was one of the first games that I ever played. And
is that a sequel of Ocarina of Time?
It is the one and only.
Is it? I don't think there's. Is it a wrong way to pronounce? I always took ocarina or ocarina as like a tomato kind of thing. Like
I think there's been like there was some video somewhere that proved like how it was pronounced. It was one of those videos where it like debated Ubisoft versus Ubisoft, and here's the reasoning behind it. And I cannot remember what it came up with for Ocarina. I probably just watched it blindly and just said, I am going to pronounce this however I want, no matter what happens.
But the majority of people on Naomi's Twitter voted for Ocarina of Time.
And I ignored that too.
Yeah, I say Ocarina.
And I'm razzing her for it.
Yeah.
There were two people who were on my side.
they're
and I wasn't one of those.
Okay. Also, I think it is Ubisoft officially.
I think it's Ubisoft.
I'm pretty sure I've heard like people that work there like on stage say it Ubisoft.
Oh god.
Okay, but moving past the text adventure part of the game. After you get back to Bug Mars, you have to run for Bug President. I believe that's the transition. You're hailed as a hero for returning, and you have to do a DDR like game against your bug opponent,
and it's like impossible.
You're not meant to perform well because the prompts come rapid fire, and if you actually try to match it, like a person will straight up say like, "Hey, maybe you should try button mashing." So like you literally just have to button mash the arrow keys through it, and once you prove your sick DDR skills, you win the presidency, which has in recent times become less improbable that will elect someone based on their DDR skills. Like that's the one thing that did strike.
That would be the best like reality show ever. Like DDR champions for the U.S. presidency.
Yeah,
I mean, we do have a president who's challenging people to IQ tests and fist fights.
Our current president is in the WWE Hall of Fame.
Yeah, so DDR skills for the presidency is not outside of the bounds of reason.
Like I was struck at how less ridiculous that seemed playing this, and then right after that, you as bug president, your job for some reason is to manufacture bug porn, and it plays out like a business simulation, and I think I like this part less than the text adventure.
Yeah, I think to me it's the least it's the least fun part of the game after you get over the initial joke of bug porn.
Yeah, which you'll see a lot because it lasts for some time, especially if you don't immediately grasp what you have to do to get past it, because the first time I played I was on it forever to the point where I actually thought that was the end of the game. And I was like, maybe I can't get past this
forever.
Yeah, it's like maybe this is supposed to, because the game is so weird that you can't really trust this. You're like, maybe this is the end, because I feel like I think I'm doing well enough, but it keeps going, and I feel like this should have stopped by now because it's not funny anymore. Because I've heard all the prompts, like the little like weird bug innuendo that the lady will say at your crappy like Windows 95 computer. And playing it the second time, like I actually didn't finish it the second time because I was like, yeah, I remember this. I don't need to play this again because I've already beaten the game. So I stopped. But like basically what you have to do is that you have to try to gain a profit. So you have to manufacture bug porn at a certain price, and it'll give you the statistics like, hey, you can manufacture this many megabytes of porn at this price, and you can also sell ads like pop-up ads, which will gain this much money, and then you can sell it, and you obviously you want to sign up for a profit. The only way to get past is that you kind of have to earn enough money to buy the like satellite and all the other upgrades for it to kind of like, I guess, extend your reach. And the first time I did it, again, I think I had the same attitude that I had with the text adventure of like, well, I could probably fudge my way through this and the joke will kind of carry me through. You know what I mean? Of like, surely they don't mean for me to like seriously try to like make money. Like there'll be a thing that something will happen that'll just lead to the next thing. And it doesn't. So like I was there. I think I might have been there even longer than I was for the text adventure.
Really?
The first time I played, because at least the text adventure, it doesn't take long to figure out that you're on your own. So like, at least for me, as someone that likes puzzles, I was like, I like that more, at least of like, okay, I know what I have to do to get out of here. I just have to figure it out. You know what I mean? Like, okay, like I find items, I put them together. I have to get into the pod to go to sleep. Okay, it's on me to figure that out. Whereas with this, it was a lot more obtuse in terms of like what to do. Like, well, how much money do I have to earn? When does this cap out? Is this going to stop? You know? So I was just more lost on this part. And the second time I played, I was even more lost of like as soon as I got there, I was like, oh yeah, this part. So I was just like, I don't know, man. And then after you set your prices, they ask you if you want to just print more money, which, you know, would lead to inflation on paper, I would imagine. I don't. So it's like, hey,
stop! You're thinking it too much. You're thinking about it too much.
I mean, you kind of have to get past it. Of like you, it's again like you actually have to crunch the numbers of like, okay, if I sell it at this price, or I set it at this price, even though at one point when you're trying to because when I first started playing it and before I remember what you had to do, I was just kind of selling things for cheap, just to get people to buy it. And then like a little window, but a character pops up and he's like, hey, you do know the point of capitalism is to manufacture low and sell high, right? And it's like, oh yeah, that's right, I actually have to try.
Right.
So I guess I'll do that. So I was thinking like literally just in pure accounting mode of like, okay, if I sell at this price and I guess and I make this much money, but oh wait, that didn't work, because I think there's also different weather conditions each day that can determine if the bugs are willing or more willing to get porn, because, you know, if it's like rainy, they're more likely to stay home, so they might buy more porn. So you kind of have to sell higher, which I give them props for like putting thought into it. I just don't think that it's as fun as maybe they wanted it to be. If it's meant to be fun, I don't know.
Yeah, I think the joke pretty much just stopped at, hey, look, there's bug porn. And
yeah, and then you're like, also get out your Excel spreadsheet and crunch these numbers.
I mean, I think like all of the there's a certain degree to where like a lot of the sections of the game rely on you kind of exploring and figuring things out for yourself. Like even I've known some people who have gotten stuck on that first frog fractions part because they never realized they could move down or up. Mm-hmm. And so they just stayed on that screen indefinitely and eventually gave up. And I think part of what makes Frog Fractions special is buckling down and figuring it out, and the willingness to kind of go that extra mile. Because I know, I guess originally, from what I was reading during my research, this game had tutorials in it that told you specifically how to get through each of these challenges, each of these modes, and what to do. And what ended up happening was one of Crawford's friends, who's actually Tim Ambrogi, who designed Jamestown, which is a top-down shooter from 2011. It's actually a really cool co-op shooter game that you should check out. But he played the game and was basically like, as kind of an FU to Crawford was just like, I'm not going to read any of your tutorials because I don't want to do that. And played through the entire game without reading any of the tutorials. And he likened the experience to finding out for the first time that you could use the candle in the original Legend of Zelda to burn bushes.
Yeah.
Because you figured that out yourself. And so, like, it's specialer. It's more special.
Specialer.
I write for a living. And I don't know. I think all of that, even when it's frustrating, is just kind of like part of that figuring it out for yourself and like discovery, that sense of weird discovery that's hard for a lot of games to like actually get to, really.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with Marcus in that the game kind of lost me at the text adventure part. But I guess I was looking at other games that kind of imitate this gacha kind of style, and one that comes to mind is the Doki Doki Literature Club. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with what happens in that.
I am.
Is that related to Doki Doki Panic?
No.
No.
Oh, okay.
Well, I mean, spoilers for anyone who hasn't played the game. It's also free. This one's on Steam. So, and I don't know if you want me to spoil it for you, Marcus.
Yeah, go ahead.
Not to put you on the spot or anything. But the game presents itself as one of those anime dating sims. And as you play, it pretty much sticks to that for the first like couple hours, maybe not even an hour. But then it quickly kind of dives into madness. I mean the it's gory, I guess. The shocking first shock is when you find one of the characters that you can romance hanging in her room. It's pretty dark. So it kind of has that, I don't know.
just a little bit.
Just a little dark. It's kind of immature in its gore, I guess. Is that fair, Jack?
It's
very,
just throwing it all up on screen.
Yeah, it's very it's very in your face. But what makes this game brilliant is that it actually plays with the structure of game design in general. Because at one point, a character in the game, Monica, she's also one of the datables, she starts erasing the other characters as characters in the game, and addresses you as the player. So eventually she's trying to get rid of all these other options in the game to make it only Monica. So you have to date her, and eventually to beat the well, I mean there's different endings, but to beat the game in one of the endings you have to end up deleting Monica, and it's really interesting. So that's what really sets that game apart. But I think the reason that game works is because it doesn't have any of those blocks like Frog Fractions does. It's a dating sim, so you click on buttons, you do the things, there's different endings, but I mean you can progress through it, you know? You don't have to have major skills in anime dating games, I guess. And you still understand what it's trying to do. It's pretty implicit. Like, I think at one point they'll be like, wouldn't it be a shame if you deleted the character or something like that? So it lets you know. But I think it's still, it gets that gotcha effect, and it does it well. Even if it does kind of rely on that kind of immature gore to do so, I think it still works. I was using that game to kind of compare. I enjoyed Doki Doki more than Frog Fractions, and that's one of the reasons why, but I mean, it's also a genre thing. It was an anime dating sim, I guess, which is more in my wheelhouse. Not that I played a lot of those, but I appreciated that it was trying to be accessible.
Yeah, and I think that they're doing slightly different things, and it also I think ultimately comes down to a matter of personal taste between which of those games you enjoy better. Because, for example, I played Doki Doki Literature, and I was really, really bored for like the first hour and a half. Because it leans so hard into being, I'm just another dating sim, and
Yep.
It's like super generic, and I was just real bored, and I knew something was coming, so I was just like, come on.
Yeah.
And once you get to the off-rails parts, it gets fun and interesting. And there is something to be said about it being way more accessible. Like, there aren't any roadblocks. Like, you aren't going to get to like a hard first-person shooting segment in Doki Doki Literature Club. But at the same time, like, it's very specifically lampooning kind of that specific genre, whereas Frog Fractions is just scattershot all over the place. Like, it's the kind of game I don't think anyone except for Jim Crawford could have made.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think there's something really special about like an auteur project like that.
There was a really great quote. I can't remember who, it might have been like PC Gamer or something like that, but they called him the Antichrist of game development or something. Because it was like his model of releasing games and monetizing it. So he completely derails everything about what you should, like, quote, should be doing as a game developer trying to get your game out there. Like Frog Fractions is not monetized. Like, you can get t-shirts and you can buy the soundtrack, but it's not. And then his second game, Frog Fractions 2, is hidden in another game, and it took players like a year to find that one.
I'm gonna be honest, not a huge fan of Frog Fractions 2.
I didn't play it.
I haven't played it yet.
I saw the 8 hours tag on it, and I was like, no, I'm good.
Yeah, I just haven't bought the game that it's in.
Which is like glittering...
Glitter Mitten Grove?
Yeah, yes. Glitter Mitten Grove.
Which is a fairy, like, house-making simulator.
That part of the game is actually really solid, and I enjoyed playing it more than I enjoyed playing Frog Fractions 2, which is, if you are not a fan of old school puzzle games, you are gonna hate it.
And
Naomi's favorite.
Because it's very much in the adventure category of running around.
Like the game Adventure?
Yeah, the game, like the Atari game Adventure, where you're running around as a square. And you're solving puzzles. And then every so often you'll solve a puzzle and it will unlock kind of like a side mini game that is like a spoof of something. Like there's one where you're one of the Marines from Aliens, and you have to share an apartment with a xenomorph, and your goal is to annoy the xenomorph enough to move out of the house instead of vaporizing you.
Which is hilarious. I can appreciate the spoofs. I don't have the patience to go through it.
Right.
You would have to watch it.
Which is why I think... Which is why I went... Yeah. Which is why I nominated Frog Fractions 1, because I think it is the superior concentrated version of Frog Fractions that doesn't require as much puzzle solving to kind of get across that weirdness and oddness and originality that's all in there. Because no one else would make a game like that ever, but it somehow works and is funny for the most part. Like,
I would love to see. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, like, there are those two. I wouldn't even call them roadblocks. I'd call them speed bumps. That kind of like throw off the momentum of the game. But I still think overall, I would put it as one of the weirdest and most deconstructionist, and like a game I would say, if you're studying games and like looking into kind of what you can make on the fringes, kind of like almost like an Andy Warhol type game. Like, it's mashing all these different things together and like commercial ideas into a package that is then released for free.
Yeah.
And
I think that
just crazy.
I think that as from pure fun factor, I think that it's a pretty top heavy game of like a lot of the most enjoyable moments of the game are in that first half. And then you get to the text adventure, and that depends on, your history with text adventures. But then after that, it just kind of like, I'm almost disappointed that it ends basically on the president note of like the bug porn stuff, because that's pretty much the last real kind of gameplay segment of the game. Which to me, for how crazy and absurd the game is a little weak. I was like, oh man, I wish there was something else something else major after that. Like, there's one other segment, but it pretty much is just the end of the game, and isn't really anything. So like I said, I appreciate the blending of genres, the just screwing around with expectations and just not really caring. But I wish that the second half of the game, from just a pure fun factor, because it's like, I appreciate the text adventure stuff, and I did enjoy elements of that because I like puzzles, but like, man, that president part, it's like, this is funny, and I respect that he kind of had like the balls or just like the not caring enough to just put this in here because why not? But
Yeah.
the act of actually playing this part is not fun. Like, it just isn't. And especially the second time, like the first time I got through it for the novelty, the second time I was like, I don't feel like typing these numbers in and trying to do like actual math. It just isn't fun. Which
Question,
I think,
though.
yeah.
Would you recommend this game to a friend to watch them play it, having played it yourself?
So that's actually going to segment into my like kind of my final point of this game. After playing it the second time, I think Frog Fractions is something you should only play once.
Yeah.
Like, actually play. Like, it's a one-time thing. I'm a guy that very rarely replays games in general. And I think this game kind of like solidified that point of like, yeah, like that first time through is so magical and will get you through some of the rougher spots for its novelty, probably. But the second time, it's, you know, it's like hearing a joke the second time. Like, you're like, oh, okay, it's like a little less funny, whatever. But when you get to the parts that are a little harder to put up with, it's almost impossible to get through it if you just don't like the gameplay aspect of it. So I'd say the only time you should see this game again is to watch someone else play it.
To watch someone else struggle through it and be baffled by it.
And just giggle every time they're like not going under the water or something.
Yeah, like,
because we're monsters.
Exactly, just to watch other people's reactions, and preferably like in person, not so much like watching a YouTuber or a streamer do it, but just sit someone down and just kind of gauge how they react to what's happening. Like, don't tell them anything about it. Just say like, hey, play this and you won't be disappointed. Probably just watch. I think that's the only yeah, like, I think that's the ideal way to see the game a second time.
Yeah. Related anecdote. I remember after I played this game, I sat a few of my friends down to play it and just watching their reactions, knowing how I reacted to it and how I went through it, and like seeing their minds get blown by that initial discovery of, oh my gosh, I can escape this weird fraction game and travel up into space. What is happening? Was just kind of amazing and really awesome and fun. It feels like you are on the inside of a joke. Like you're on an in-joke with everyone else who's played Frog Fractions.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I don't know, there's something a little magical about that. I don't think any other game has really done that for me.
Yeah, I think like I said, it's a very magical game. I just think it's a little inconsistent, which might sound weird for a game that's a mishmash of different genres, but I mean, inconsistent in the sense of like that first half is almost like on rails to a degree of like I said, like it's a very laid back, like you can't really fail, and it's even kind of fun of like, you know, even just the act of like looking up bugs has a bit of a satisfaction to it, seeing those fractions randomly fly across, and you're like, oh, okay, I'm getting through this at a brisk pace, and then it hits that second half of actually having to do work to get to the end of it. So
I've seen it described as dreamlike. The first half is dreamlike, and I appreciate that description, because I mean, you're escaping reality, right? And that's how dreams usually are. You start out in something that's kind of grounded in reality, and then reality disintegrates around you, and you go flying through space and go to Bug Mars and go to a courtroom and get asked ridiculous questions, and then ride on the dragons back through the ocean, right? I don't play text adventures in my dreams. I'm sorry. I hope like, I don't ever, because that, oh man.
It's like if the first half was like Asura's Wrath of just this bonkers, over the top, on rail shooter where you're mainly just hitting button prompts and watching an anime fight play out, and then you're like, oh, this is insane, what the hell, and you don't really have to do much, and then the second half becomes Dark Souls. Oh god. You're like, wait, what? Like, this is hard now? I have to actively play the game now?
When right before that you were like drifting through the ocean, like, and doing nothing.
Like 2 seconds ago you were talking with your mentor who was in a hot tub on like in space, and then he used the sword to send you stabbing back to Earth, and you're like, this is insane, and then the next thing you knew, you're fighting, I don't know, the crazy sword guy or something in Dark Souls, and you have to actually dodge and block, and you can lose all your experience. So
that's a very good point, that it's very dreamlike. Like, you're leaving reality, blasting off of the familiar into something unknown. I like that. I like that interpretation. So I guess my question is, I feel like the answer is going to be no, but do you guys think this is one of the best games, period? Like, is it one of those games that is better for its rough edges, or is that something that you're just kind of like, no, this should have been more refined, or
I don't think it needs to be more refined. I think, I mean, this is obviously not a game that I enjoyed as much as you, Jack, but yeah. I can appreciate what it contributed to gaming, because it came out in 2012 when indie games were getting a little bit more notoriety. And because of this game getting its viral 15 minutes, or I guess longer than that, we were able to see in the mainstream what indie games could be. So I think it helped push the boundaries of gaming in general, and because of that, I think it could be one of the best games, period. It's not a personal one for me, but I can appreciate what it was able to do.
Okay, so you're doing like a soft no?
Soft yes, I guess.
Oh, soft, okay.
Like a reluctant yes?
Yes.
Those dang puzzles.
Yes.
I guess for me, I think I almost wish I didn't play it a second time.
Okay.
I think like I said before, I think it's stronger if you do the one and you're out, because it very much is built on a strength of seeing things once again, like a good joke of like it hits you hard that first time and you just kind of like let your memory take over from there. It's an interesting game, obviously, by design. I respect the hell out of it, and I think it's a really cool thing that exists, especially for how easy it is to access. Is it one of the best games, like, period or ever? That's and it's a trickier thing.
Again, this isn't like the best game ever.
No.
This is like, is it for whatever reason one of the best games, period? Something that belongs in video game canon.
Maybe because it's one of those games that I will recommend people play in a heartbeat. Okay. Because of how unique it is. And if it wasn't and not like in an ironic sense of like, this is terrible, you gotta see this. It's more like, no. I think that this is an experience unlike so many other games that I think you should try, because you won't find anything like this, and you might be better for playing it and seeing how weird a game can be. So for the game to accomplish that, even with its rough edges, I think that's something that's a feat in itself. And like, the worst things I can say is that even though some of the stuff that isn't great, I think my problem with it is that the less great things maybe last too long. Like, I wouldn't have had much of an issue if, like, maybe if the text adventure had been cut down a little bit, and if the bug porn thing ended sooner, like, because it can drag too long, like, just do a hard cut. Like, maybe shave that down a bit so that the joke is more effective. Like, okay. And then you're not just sitting in a chair like, oh, wait, this is still going? Okay. Yeah, like, if it shaved those down, then the game would be maybe almost, it's maybe not perfect, but, closer to perfect, we'll say. But yeah, I think that you could say it's one of the best games, period, especially of this current decade.
Okay.
Because there still is very little quite like it.
I'm honestly shocked that I got both of you to agree with me. I thought for sure you were both going to say no, or at least soft no's. So I guess we did it. Hooray!
Hooray.
Right. We did it. Let's go make some bug porn.
No, let's not.
Sell it for a high price.
Capitalism.
How many megs? Okay. How many megs can we get? Can we get our citizenship cards for Bug Mars?
So thank you everyone for listening. We'll have a poll up this week for whether or not you agree with us, whether or not you agree with us about Frog Fractions indeed being one of the best games, period. thank you very much, Marcus, for coming on the show. Where can people find you and your stuff?
Well, on Twitter, you can find me at MarcusStewart7. That's the number 7. And you can check me out on my personal website, marcuswritesaboutgames.wordpress.com. You'll be seeing some first impressions soon for both Sea of Thieves and the Darwin Project.
Ooh.
You can also check out my own podcast, Carving Gaming Rushmores, both of which you've appeared on. In fact, the upcoming episode will have Miss Naomi on it. It's a very fun one.
Oh, God. The things I said about Noctis cannot be unsaid.
If the regret, or I don't know if it's regret.
It's not regret.
Okay.
It's not.
Then the proudness in her, the pride in her voice.
It's pure id, I guess.
Then is any indication it's an episode worth checking out. That should be up probably by the time that this airs. And also you can check me out on gaminghistoria.com. It's kind of a newer site that I've been contributing to. I've recently put up a feature on Super Smash Brothers, which Super Smash Brothers 4 newcomers should make a comeback in Smash 5 for Switch, and why. So yeah, that's what I've got going on right now.
Okay. And to wrap up, again, thank you for coming on the show. And the poll results. So we didn't do a poll this week on our last episode, which was, what was our last episode, Naomi?
The Stanley Parable.
The Stanley Parable. Thank you. But we did do a poll for threes, which I believe on Twitter the results were overwhelmingly no.
67% no.
Okay.
Boo.
Majority
Threes
no.
Threes is a great game.
On Facebook, I believe it was more evenly split, 50-50. So there are at least a not insubstantial number of people who agree with me. And that's
I think the people that said no, are clearly fans of 2048. That's the problem.
They're plants. They're all paid for. So thank you everyone who voted on Twitter, and you can find us on Twitter to vote in polls or just tell us what you think of the show at Best Games Period. And you can also, if you really enjoy the show, and we're 91 episodes deep, so if you've listened to all of our stuff, consider throwing $1 our way on Patreon, patreon.com/bestgamesperiod. You can find special unique episodes, unique to people who throw $1 our way every month to kind of keep the lights on and the show running. And also Extra Life. It's an amazing charity where you play games and raise money for sick and injured kids across the United States and North America. So really, what's to dislike about that? You can learn more over on extra-life.org. And if you want to get more involved in the community side of things, maybe like meet some people in your area who do Extra Life and contribute to your local children's hospital, you can do that over on community.extra-life.org, where you can find this very podcast along with a bunch of other articles about games, tabletop games, board games, video games, all kinds of games. You can also find this podcast on SoundCloud, iTunes, probably Spotify, maybe. I don't know. Check it out. And that is it. Do you want to say anything to close out the show, Naomi?
Thank you so much for listening. We appreciate all of you so much. If you ever have any recommendations for games that you want to hear us talk about, feel free to give us a shout on Twitter. We will definitely consider your best games.
For sure. And with that, we'll see you next time on the Flippity Dippity.